Well, hi guys, it's that time. It's our Bible teaching snippet of the day. Well, today I want to hop in and do part 3 of our in-depth study of the parable of the rich man and Lazarus. We find that in Luke chapter 16, verse 19 through 31, okay? Now, the first 2 teachings I've done, all I've done is lay a firm foundation to build upon. And the reason for this, okay? I can name you off right now 3 church doctrines that has come from this one parable. The concept of a place called hell, eternal, ongoing, conscious punishment where people are thrown into this lake of fire by God when He rejects them, okay? The second church doctrine that we find, which is a false doctrine, by the way, is Jesus went to this lake of fire and He was in ongoing conscious punishment in the lake of fire, burning for 3 days, and then He resurrected. The third one I have not discussed yet, but this one is also from this parable, the place called purgatory. The Catholic Church used to be huge on this. Now, I think they've kind of moved away from that, but they used to, what they would do is when a loved one would die and a family's not sure if they're in heaven or hell, they taught that there's a place called purgatory, and the family could make payments to the church, and the church leaders would pray and atone for the sinner who's in this purgatory to be forgiven. And then, once he gets released, or he or she gets released from purgatory, they get to go to heaven. So that's a false doctrine. And the reason that we have these false doctrines is because we're so far removed from what was really being taught here that we're just grabbing in the air going, oh, well, that's what that must mean, and this is what this means, and we put together a lot of crazy mixed up stuff. I said this the other day, okay, we need to take some junk out of our trunk and make room for some truth, because we have got a lot of snatch and grab verses that has been taught, and I've had to spend 20-30 minutes just unraveling that before I can even teach this. So let me start here and tell you this. This will just blow your mind, and it's very interesting to me. There is this story that Jesus told, the story of the rich man and Lazarus. Did you know that Jesus is not the originator of that parable? This story, an analogy, parable, is found in the Gemara, Gemara, Gemara Babylonicum, okay? This is a Jewish writing that was written, okay? It's more than just this one parable, but it's like writings that was done while the children of Israel was in captivity by the Babylonians, okay? Everybody in the day of Jesus would have understood exactly what Jesus was talking about when He told this parable of the rich man and the poor man, okay? Now, let me show you how this is why we don't understand. We're 2,000 years out. We're in a different culture, okay? And our Bibles have been translated and mistranslated and new words put in and all of this. But here's what I want to show you this. If I use the movie The Matrix to teach some spiritual truths, okay? And it does have a lot of spiritual stuff in it, by the way. But if I taught that today, do you think that 100 years from now, or even 2,000 years from now, people would understand what I'm trying to teach from that movie, The Matrix, when they don't know what it is and have never heard of it and never even... See, that's what I want you to understand. So that's what we've got going on, okay? Now today, now that I've said this, I want to talk to you one more time about this name Lazarus, okay? Lazarus in the New Testament is also the name Eleazar in the Old Testament. And this name means 2 different things. One without help, and it also means one whom God helps. Now, I want to bring this in today and show you this is why Jesus picked the name Lazarus to use right here, okay? He's using the name Lazarus for a reason in this parable, okay? He's using it because the man, when he was alive here and now in the earth, had no help. No one helped him. He was without help. When he dies, okay, now he's become the one whom God helps. You got it? This whole parable is about a reversal of fortunes, people who are rich, and it's not about the money either. I need to bring that out. But rich people who love their money, they wear nice clothes, they eat the finest food, and watch. The poor man, okay, the poor man, now the King James calls him a beggar, but what that Greek word really is, and it's translated it's used 34 times in the New Testament, and in many translations, it is always, always, always translated as poor, okay? Every time but twice, we find it in the King James, it's poor, okay? King James, it says beggar right here in this story, and in Galatians 4:9, where Paul says the weak and beggarly elements. Many Bibles say the weak and poor elements, okay? So the King James used beggar here, and I think that kind of mixes us up. But because it doesn't help us mine out what's really going on. Jesus is talking about a person who is living in luxury day after day, and this poor man is at his gate. The rich man, is literally walking past this poor man every single day of his life, and he never stops to speak to him, to help him, and never feeds him not one meal. That's what Jesus was teaching in this parable. Now, one other thing I want to say, and I said this yesterday, Jesus was talking directly to the religious leaders, and here's why. The religious leaders, the Pharisees and scribes, they wore these nice, beautiful garments, and they had lots of money. They were the upper crust of the Judaism religion, okay? And they felt like that they were accepted by God because he was blessing them with all of this wealth, and the poor man was cursed by God because he was sick and hungry. I hope this is making some sense for you today. But I just wanted to talk a little bit about that because I think we need to know this about this parable. And I told you that the word poor was used 34 times. Let me find it here. I want to show you where Jesus uses this, the word poor, and I just want to connect this for you. Let me scroll down to it. Right here in Luke chapter 4, verse 18, okay? And Jesus says that the Spirit of the Lord is upon me because he has anointed me to preach the gospel to the poor, right? So with me talking to you about the word poor, that's 34 times in the New Testament, and it's used here in this parable a few times, I want to tell you what the word poor means. And this is the Greek word, and it's number 4434, okay? And it says, reduced to beggary, begging, asking for alms, destitute of wealth, influence, position, and honor, lowly, afflicted, helpless, powerless to accomplish a given end. Because the man couldn't get any food, and he couldn't get any help. Nobody had helped him with his sickness, so he couldn't accomplish an end of getting fed, and he couldn't get well. Okay, and here's the other meanings. Poor and needy, okay? So this word, I'm not even going to try to pronounce it. It's P-T-long-O-C-H-O-S, okay? And that's the Greek word right here that we're dealing with. So from here, what I think I want to do is hop in and read part of this parable to you, and hopefully it's going to kind of make a little bit of sense now that I have laid a lot of groundwork prior to reading it. And let's start right here. And this is it says, once there was a rich man who used to dress in purple and fine linen and lead a life of daily luxury. And there was a poor man called Lazarus who was put at his gate daily. He was covered with sores. He used to long to be fed with the scraps, the crumbs from the rich man's table. And yes, the dogs used to come and lick the poor man's sores. Well, it happened that the poor man died and was carried by the angels to Abraham's bosom. The rich man also died and was buried, and from among the dead, from his grave, the rich man looked up and saw Abraham and a long way away and Lazarus, the poor man, in his arms. And I'm going to stop here today because I want to talk about this and wrap this up. What we see here, okay, and I want to make sure, well, I'll tell you what, and what we know enough about it is that the man goes into punishment. Let me go ahead and read just a little bit further and then I'll stop. So it talks about the rich man died also, and now he's talking to Father Abraham from his grave. Father Abraham, he cried, please pity me. Send Lazarus to dip the tip of his finger in water and cool my tongue. I am in agony in these flames. Okay, so what we see here, okay, is we have a rich man who had all the wonderful things, and now he's not comfortable because he has lived his life loving himself and loving money and not caring for the poor. I want you to think about all through the Old Testament, God talks about taking care of the poor, the widows, the orphans, okay? In the New Testament, same way. In the Gospels, all through the New Testament. All right, here we go. Undefiled, pure religion, and it's actually the word worship to God. Undefiled, pure worship to God the Father is to care for the widows and the orphans. See, those were the poor people back then. It's talking about poor people in this parable, okay? So what we see is this rich man keeps going back and forth past the man who is sick and hungry and will not help him. Now, I'm going to close out here, but this is why I wanted to stop here. I want to ask you a few questions. I want you to think about this, okay? In this story where the rich man is in what we call hell in the King James Version, and he's actually just in his grave. And then we see Abraham's bosom is where the poor man is, and it's taught that that means heaven, right? Okay, so let me ask you something. Does that mean that being rich makes a person go to hell? Every rich person has to go to hell. And every poor person has to go to heaven. See, Jesus never even said that the rich man was a sinner or he was living in sin or anything like that. And nor do we see where Jesus actually says that the poor man was a righteous man or saved or what we would call in religion a saint, right? So we don't see Jesus labeling either one of them as sinner or saint or the lost or saved here. No, he's showing us that you've got a rich person who is self-centered, loving their life, not caring for the poor, to the point that the poor man and hungry, sick man is laying in his doorway and the man keeps walking by him every single day. Now here's another question I want to ask you. Abraham's bosom, if this was an actual real true story about two real people, please explain to me how many people will fit in Abraham's chest cavity, Abraham's bosom, because that's what it says, and that's the reason they're using the Abraham's bosom there, is because the listeners of that day knew that it was an analogy, it was an illustration to teach a deeper truth. Well, listen, I'm going to sign off here, and I'll probably do just one more teaching on this because there's some more things I want to draw out of this to show you. But really what this teaching is about, guys, is the religious leaders who dressed in these fine garments, had the nicest food to eat, and they lived the life of luxury, would walk by poor Jews who were rejected by yes, there were Jews who were rejected by Judaism, the religion of the Jews that day. And they would reject these poor Jews and mistreat them, and they would reject and not have anything to do with Gentiles because they didn't think that they were worthy and accepted by God, okay? So this is what this parable is talking about, is people have these fixed ideas about who God is accepting and who's automatically going to hell. And Jesus is showing that that's not necessarily true. Anyway, I'll see you here tomorrow with a little more on this teaching. I love each and every one of you, and I'll see you then. Bye-bye.